Welcome to the Southern Region RAC meeting. This meeting is being held in Cedar City tonight at the Charles Huntsman room on SUU campus. It's also being streamed live on YouTube. This is a public forum, allows you to express your opinions and ideas on wildlife management in our state. This RAC considers your feedback on proposals before us today and reports them to the Wildlife Board. Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is charged with setting wildlife policy for our state. We all have ideas and opinions about what is best for Utah's wildlife. That's why we're here today. We encourage those who want to express their opinion fill out comment cards located out here in the hallway, green cards, and turn them in to the division employees. And focus those on the topics listed that are on the agenda. If you have unrelated comments, will not be heard today and should be sent directly to the DWR or RAC and board members for consideration at another time. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that don't align with their own. Respectful behavior facilitates efficient meetings where RAC members can listen, digest, and address the concerns, ideas, and proposals being presented. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated, and those who engage in it will be asked to leave. Lastly, please help reduce distractions during the meeting by putting your phone on silent. If you need to take a call, we ask you step outside. Thank you. We want to recognize Paul Richmond and Kent Johnson, I'm sorry. He's online, that are both set on the Wildlife Board. Thank you for being here. With that, I'm going to turn I guess we'll go ahead and approve the last meeting minutes from the last meeting, and then I'll turn the time over to Kevin. Can I get a motion on the...
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion approved. One is seconded. Those in favor, raise your right hand. Online. Can't see this. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. And now we'll move on, let Kevin go over the Wildlife Board meeting updates and regional update for our region.
Thank you, Brian. The last board meeting, there were a few action items. The first one was the Southeastern region made some changes to their big game management plan, specifically raising the objective on a couple of their deer units, and that was passed unanimously by the Wildlife Board. There was also a mid-plan review for the mountain goat and bighorn sheep plans, and if you remember, one of the items that was specific to the southern region was a potential release site over on the Boulder Mountain, and there was quite a bit of discussion about that. There was support from the ag community at large, from the Farm Bureau and others, but we had a few producers that expressed some concern about that. The board did go ahead and pass that plan, but we made a commitment here from the southern region that before any releases would take place on the boulders, we'd put together a local working group, including those that express concern, and make sure that we can work through any issues prior to that happening. And with that caveat, the board was comfortable with passing that recommendation. The other things that were just specific to the Wildlife Board, and they all passed unanimously. There was a conservation permit audit, the conservation permit annual report, the expo permit audit, and the expo permit allocation. And then the board did review and pass the RAC and board meeting dates for 2026. But those other items were they weren't presented at the RAC, and they were just heard at the board meeting. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me. Okay, if not, I'll move just into the wildlife or the regional update. And Adam, I'm just going to do it on my screen here, and hopefully you and I can stay in sync.
Okay.
Because I don't have eyes in the back of my head. So starting with the wildlife section, so we have continued holding our local mule deer meetings. We've had the second meeting for the Cedar City group is scheduled for December 3rd. Richfield has held their second meeting and has a third one scheduled for December 11th. And the group that meets over at Ruby's Inn has had their second meeting. Those seem to be going really well. It gives us just a more relaxed environment to discuss things to do with mule deer. We're hoping to have projects on the ground that come directly out of those groups by this time next year, whether that be water or guzzlers or water development or habitat treatments. Obviously, we always talk about predator management and what we're doing there in those groups as well. So those are going well. Overall, the feedback from this year's rifle deer hunt was positive. I haven't heard a lot off of the primitive weapon hunt on the Boulder Mountain, but those that hunted the Beaver West that I talked to personally just anecdotally enjoyed that hunt, which was one of the big changes that was implemented this year. We're continuing CWD collections on the Pine Valley, Southwest Desert, Beaver, and Fillmore units. That's mostly coming from roadkill at this point. We'll hear a lot more about CWD here tonight. This is probably the busiest time of year for our wildlife biologists. They're doing their postseason deer classifications. But also we have a lot of captures going on right now, and so you'll see not many of other than Teresa. We excuse them tonight just because they're piling up hours faster than they should be, and we wanted to give them a little time with their family. Lots of deer capture scheduled in December. We have a tentative schedule, so if any of the RAC members are interested in being involved with those, contact Teresa and she can keep you in the loop on. Obviously, that it's a moving target based on weather and everything else, and things develop quickly, but we'll try to get you out if we can. And then just a reminder, also from Teresa, that deer are migrating right now, so slow down when you're out on the roads. A lot of work with guzzlers recently, and we've installed 12 new guzzlers in 6 locations on the Pine Valley and Southwest Desert units. We still have, I don't know, what is it, David, another 20-something stacked up in the yard that we'll be working on installing over the next few months. I see a new one down on Washington. Is that you? I'm sure it was, but I've lost track of every place we've been putting them. So, bighorn sheep flights last week and saw good numbers. We had 255 sheep counted on the Oak Creek. Just as a reminder, that herd was started with only 23 in 2014, so we've had really good growth and success with that translocation. The minerals, we counted 106 sheep, and that one was started with 51 in 2019. So again, good growth there on the mineral mountains as well. And then we put 10 new collars on goats on Mount Dutton, and that population seems to be. We've continued releasing penrod pheasants on our WMAs and on some private property around with walking access around the region. That'll continue through the end of November, and so hopefully if get a chance, especially if you have young hunters or new hunters, that's a really good opportunity to get them out and find a pheasant. Prairie dogs have been off the charts with still going or benefiting from the 2021-2022 moisture that we had, and they trapped over 2,300 Utah prairie dogs and moved them out onto public land, which is good on several fronts. Moving to our aquatics. The issues that happened up at Penguich Lake with the dam, if you remember, and the concerns there have created an opportunity for us, where I call it big straw, which is really what it is. It's this graphic. You can see there's a water quality issue up at Penguich Lake because of the shape of that lake. You can see the dam. It'd be on your right-hand side. But unlike most reservoirs, the dam's not at the low point. And so we get accumulation of nutrients down in the bottom of that bowl. And that's where the algae blooms and some of the water quality impacts that happen up at Penguich Lake are a result of that. With the new dam being built, we worked with the irrigation company and DEQ and others, and we'll be installing a siphon down in the low point of Penguich Lake, which will allow us to pull that nutrient-rich water out over time and create a lot better water quality with Penguich Lake. This is a really big deal and will benefit Penguich Lake in a lot of ways for decades to come. So we're really happy that's moving forward. And the new dam at Penguich Lake is under construction right now and should be done in the spring. Moving on with our sport fish, we completed the 2 projects up at Twin Creeks, at Fish Lake, in a parking area. A lot of people enjoy that boardwalk and be able to see the kokanee coming up and spawning there. And that's been a really good addition to that lake. We also recently completed our fall gill netting surveys at Lake Powell. Low water levels are having an impact there. The shad and the older overstriped bass were pretty skinny and not in very good shape, but the younger fish were still healthy and strong. Total angler hours are down, but catch rates are up, and fishing at Lake Powell is always good. So if you haven't experienced that, you need to. And then just in general, we're wrapping up our field work and transitioning into report writing and whatnot in our aquatic section. Washington County Field Office deals with a lot of our threatened and endangered species and conservation species. Released some western toads on the Pontchartrain Plateau. We're trying to keep them off the endangered species list. Desert tortoise, finished plant restoration projects in the Red Cliff National Conservation Area. And then mollusks are kind of a new thing over the last decade or so that we're trying to get a handle on. And we're continuing to collect samples and do genetic work to determine what species of spring snails we have. It's primarily out in the West Desert. Again, more with the Virgin River program. Woundfin are one of the threatened fish species that occurs only in the Virgin River. We've had good success, there was kind of a scare with them last year, but we're getting back on track with the conservation population that's in our hatcheries and provides us with fish to be translocated within the Virgin River. And then we've been watching the Santa Clara River close after the fires on the Pine Valley or directly above that watershed. And so far, although there's some pretty ugly water in Gunlock and above, the fish are surviving okay so far. And we're probably past the worst part of that now. Habitat section, just got, with the government shutdown and furloughs, we weren't sure what was going to happen with some of our rehab projects. We had a couple of big fires here in the southern region on the Monroe, and then the France Canyon fire and the Forsyth fire. And I'm happy to report that rehab work is underway on all 3 of those fires. And we're still working closely with the Forest Service and hopeful that we'll get additional funding and working on those fire scars. We have a new restoration biologist. He happens to be here tonight, David Montague, and we'll be hiring also a new NRCS biologist within our habitat section here within the next couple of weeks. And then we were able to provide some relief to some of the grazers, or one of the grazers in particular that was impacted on the Monroe fire, and we're able to give them some a grass bank permit out on our Elbow Ranch WMA. That went well. Outreach, they put on a really good event with a local butcher, and here in Cedar City. wasn't as well attended as we wanted it to be. The slots were filled up. Some people that signed up didn't show up and they missed out because there was a lot of really good food and people learned how to do ideas on cooking game meat. Again, the regional pheasant hunts are going on. We had some beginning hunter hunts out on the Pavant WMA and in Annabella and here in Cedar City, and those all went well. And I always pucker a little bit when we have a whole bunch of kids and people out hunting, new hunters, but we keep them safe and we have every other year and again this year. So, and then our hunters helping condor check stations. That's an effort to try to get hunters to use non-lead ammo on the Zion unit in particular for California condor restoration, and we had another successful year with that program. And then just a reminder from our dedicated hunter program, there's still projects available for service hours, and then for everybody, get your harvest reports in, or you'll be giving us an extra $50 before you can apply for next year's hunt. So, and then just lastly, law enforcement. They had a really busy fall. It's always busy in the fall for them. The officers in the region investigated over 60 cases just during the month of October. They're working on getting those cases through the court system right here. So that's all I have, but we'd be happy to answer any questions from RAC members.
Guess you make this work. So you mentioned the deer meetings, and there was one in Richfield. Was that on the 3rd? Is that?
Yeah, there'll be a follow-up. So we had
the first round, and
this will be the 3rd one in Richfield. They had one in about the middle of November. I think it was scheduled right between the early or the two of the deer hunts, the early and regular deer hunt. And then they've got another one scheduled for the 3rd.
Okay. And then you also mentioned grass bank for Monroe permitting. How does that work? I'm not heard of you guys.
So we have grazing permits that are just part of some of our WMAs. We keep some of our wildlife management areas that we don't have a regular permit on. When we have fires across the region, we work through the Department of Agriculture and Farm Bureau and the Forest Service, and in some cases we're able to offer some relief. It's usually not a lot. This was only a 30-day permit, but it did give a graze for 30 days for about, I think it was about 100 cows for 30 days. We said we might have gotten otherwise. So, any other questions? Okay, and it gets back to you, Brian.
All right, any questions for anyone from the public so far? I think we'll move on to Ginger. Is she here in person? Thank you, Ginger, and she's going to talk to us about CWD.
Do you have any questions?
I guess we're moving on towards mandatory testing in the future. Correct?
Correct.
And next year, will it be on Ogden?
Yes.
And that's because that's the newest area from what I remember from the presentation, correct?
Yes. Did you want
the
me to-
areas are rampant. If you want to go into that, maybe just talk about that a little bit.
Maybe just summarize the
Okay.
presentation.
Gotcha. So CWD has been in Utah for a pretty long time, but we've always struggled with getting the right sample sizes that we need to determine the correct prevalence in each unit. Each year, what we aim to get is 300 samples per our target unit, but we don't come close to that a lot of the time. And our units are on a 5-year rotation, so we trade up which units we sample each year to meet that objective. So in the past, we've had, not very good hunter participation. So we've had low sample sizes to have that correct prevalence. And in order to get a better estimate, for a more correct estimate of prevalence in an area, we're implementing mandatory testing. And Ogden is where we're gonna start. We're gonna start small so that we don't, we teach people how to do this, what we're doing. And then over the years, we may expand the mandatory testing to other units and other hunts. But initially, we'll start in the Ogden unit. It'll be the general season deer hunt. And it'll just be that short time frame and get people used to the idea.
I think the presentation, usually people associate it to deer. But didn't it talk about an elk having it? Do elk get affected the same way the deer do?
Yes, so we are worried about elk as well. In this unit in particular, we don't know what's going on. That's why we're starting there. But initially we see our cases start in the mule deer herd, and then over time we'll start to get elk cases. So in this unit, we got an elk case first. So we're wondering if it is actually in the deer population or not. That's why we're starting with deer. But for voluntary testing, we'll still do the whole unit for deer and elk. So all hunts in both species. But that'll be, the rest of the hunts will be voluntary as opposed to mandatory.
I also see in the presentation, I talked about, I think you guys said you first had CWD in the state in 2002. I was on a hunt in Colorado recently with my daughter, and we were in a mandatory test unit for, and she killed a deer. Checked it in, only gave more than there. Time came back and was doing the testing. He had mentioned that Utah tested this back in the 70s in the South. Is there any truth to that?
No, I think we began testing in the 90s when Colorado and Wyoming started giving disease. There may have been some other disease testing that occurred during the 70s, but I haven't looked at the records that far back.
Did science know what a prion was in the 70s?
It's a really good question.
I
I'm
don't
not
know if
sure.
they did, but.
With your road samples, is there just not enough coming in that way?
Correct. So for our testing, we actually have a point system, and it's weighted towards the suspect and roadkill deer that we find. And that gives us more points to add into the total. So the 300 that I talked about isn't every single test. It's actually the score that we give that particular weighted sample. So yes, roadkill plays a big role in it, and it actually helps us find CWD initially in a unit, but it doesn't tell us what's going on across the unit. So it's really specific to those rooted areas.
I have a question on the roadkill. Do you coordinate with sheriffs? Do you coordinate with county sheriff departments? Because typically they come and just pull a carcass off the road. Is there good coordination there?
There is not good coordination, and that's something we are working on. We just had our first meetings with UDOT to try to coordinate the contractors that come and pick up roadkill. But the next step will be law enforcement and other people that also interact with roadkill.
Thank you.
I think you mentioned that there were some limitations, time and money. What is a CWD analysis cost using for
So it's going to be $35 per sample.
person?
Yeah.
And it's taking 2 to 6 weeks, depending on how backlogged they are, or
Correct.
so I should start a lab.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be great to have more options.
Okay, so I guess I missed something earlier. When I heard the 300 point, I was assuming from the presentation you needed 300 deer. But you're saying that there's a weighting going on there, and some deer are weighted more than others. You don't need 300 deer, you need 300 points until you start feeling like you have the statistical power you need to
Correct.
How does that weighting work? Because I was under the same assumption as well when I saw it.
Sorry, I didn't. make
Sorry,
that
how does
clear.
that weighting work? Because I was under the same assumption when I watched the presentation, that it was number.
Yeah, and sorry I didn't make that clear in the presentation. But the weighted scale, it just gives a certain value for suspect, roadkill, female, male, and then yearlings. So the most points is 5, then it's a suspect deer, and then roadkill is under that. Bucks are weighted higher than does in that scale too. I can send a chart if you're interested in the exact numbers, and it's also in the CWD management plan.
Is there ongoing testing to try and come up with some for this? We're doing?
Unfortunately, there's no cure for CWD. It is fatal. But there's a lot of research going on. In Utah specifically, we're looking at live animal tests. So, in the past, we've only been able to test dead animals, but we're working on different tissue types where we can actually tell before they die if they have CWD or not. But right now, there's no validated test for live animals. And then other places in Canada and North America are doing pretty heavy prion research, looking at all sorts of things like how it persists in the environment, how the different strains are present in animals, the genetics behind animal and how they react to the prion. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Some people are looking at vaccines, but so far it's not showing much promise.
So with all of our deer captures, that there's not a blood sample that can be tested, to tell us a positive or not in those areas that we're capturing.
So we are testing all the deer that we're catching. So we're taking an ear punch, nasal swabs, feces, and different samples to see if we actually can detect it in those live animals. Yeah, so that's ongoing right now.
I know this is a non-action item, but is there anything that can start with boards to help with this? Or?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is education, and that's why I'm showing up in each region to answer questions that everyone has. I think it's the thing we found out through focus groups and surveys that we've done is that hunters don't know very much about CWD. And so I'm working towards, having an education effort in the state. And we just applied for another grant, hoping to get more of a marketing campaign for this next year. So we are working on it. But what you can do to help is just, tell your friends, everyone that we are looking for samples and to look at the website for those target units. And if you're in that unit, then please submit.
Thank you. Is there any other questions on the RAC?
So I had a question. Is there a time limit to, if you harvest a deer? Well, that sample needs to be collected?
Yes,
About
yes. We'd like it within 24 to 48 hours. If you keep it cool, you can save it for longer. And we can actually take that sample even if it's frozen. So the answer to that is how it's actually treated after the hunt. But if you keep it in a cooler, then up to 48 hours. It's a typical time.
You mentioned in your presentation that you're doing hereditary testing on the Ogden unit. You can do that for a year or two, see how that works out. How concerned are you that that's not moving fast enough, given the curve we're starting to see on some of the units? It feels like, to me, it feels like maybe we're going too slow, but we're being a little too cautious and that it's gonna run right by us while we're trying to figure out mandatory testing? That concern?
No, that's valid. I think the way to mitigate that is to just educate and say we're looking for voluntary sampling. So really push that. And then we're also making videos so hunters can take their own samples and hoping to increase like drop off places that hunters can submit their sample. So just overall making it easier for people to do it and to know that we want those samples.
So one question. So in that, with what Chuck said, to get the samples, are you just wanting Ogden samples or will you accept all samples across the state? Or are you just targeting in Ogden for the mandatory? Obviously with this, with the information, but you know, we have hot spots around the state. Would you accept those samples if they're willing to bring them in
Yeah.
to the region offices?
So we have, like I said, a 5-year rotation of all the deer units. So if we select it as a target unit, then yes, we want those samples. If it's outside of those units, unfortunately, we can't pay for every single hunter's sample. So you can get them tested on your own.
Do you anticipate resistance to mandatory testing? Are you experiencing that now, or what do you anticipate?
So far, we have not had anyone that I know of be resistant, but that's why we're starting slow to try to help people along the process and get them used to the idea.
Chad has been waiting very patiently to ask a question.
Well, maybe this will show my ignorance, but I listened to your presentation, it seemed that you indicated this disease was passed environmentally. And so I guess my question is, can't you test deer dropping feces? Or wouldn't that be a more readily available sample?
Yeah, it's complicated is the answer. And people have tried a lot. And that is one of our samples that we're looking at to see if we can use it as a valid test. But the type of testing that confirms prions we need tissue for. And there's a new molecular test that we are using on these live animal samples that we're hoping will help develop tests for that. But they have actually done a lot of environmental testing and found it, but it's still in the research phase.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So, let's say we find it, we have it, and getting out of hand, what are your ways to mitigate it that you're looking at, or that didn't go too much in?
Yeah, so our goal in all of this is to reduce the spread to new areas and keep the prevalence low. We know we're gonna have it, right? But we just don't want it to get much higher in prevalence, which is why we need to know what the prevalence is to start with. But so that education campaign, we're really hoping to educate people on proper carcass disposal, you know, not having someone hunt in the LaSalle's and then drive all the way to Box Elder and drop their carcass in the environment. That's what we're trying to avoid, because that can move prions across the state and start a new hotspot. So really education is a big component. And then, you know, working with all the different entities that handle carcasses to make it easier to dispose of carcasses. And then in some units, keeping the buck to doe ratio lower on the lower end will help a lot, because the bucks are more likely to have the CWD, and with their behavior, they're more likely to spread it around. And then in some areas where prevalence is really high, reducing density could be an option, but it's very case specific, and each area is going to be different.
That will be a that she's subject to reducing deer populations in the state.
Yes, and it wouldn't be, obviously we work within the constraints of our tags and, public opinion and all of that.
And Brian, I would add, I mean, we have done that. And there's, in my opinion, it's very localized. It's not like a whole unit. It's a particular spot within a unit, trying to reduce density, not across the largest plants.
Correct. Yes. So if it's going to be done, it'd be very targeted and not, like in Bountiful, there's a big hot spot. We're trying to reduce the density of those deer.
Right, but I do think this was also brought up as a reason for lower run-to-no ratios in the management plan and stuff. Sometimes
Yes.
used as a reason. I'm trying to. Thank you.
So it says in the management plan that they're highly resistant in the environment. I remember that was something we brought up few racks ago. What does that mean? I understand what it means resistant. It won't degrade, deteriorate, but how long in the environment is it typically communicable?
So typically 5+ years,
5+ years. Okay.
depending on the soil type, the weather, all of the different environmental components.
Are there known things that actually degrade it?
No, not right now,
Okay, thanks.
especially in the environment.
Any other, open it up to public questions? Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ginger. Thank you. All right, so the next one on our list is the 5/27 table and see the dates revisions. Sam,
Yeah, thank you.
go with that.
I don't have anything to add, so I'll just answer any questions.
Is your mic on?
Oh. Is that better? Sorry. I don't have anything to add or any clarification, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't remember a lot of revisions. I think maybe there was something to do with Buffalo.
Henry Mountains bison, an additional cow hunt, and then changing the extended archery boundary on the west cache and the season dates.
Question about, does the archery hunt for the bison, has it always been last? Or is that something that's happened through the years?
I don't know when that has changed, but it has been the last little bit.
So I also, in your presentation, saw that would drop archery hunters down next year to an 8-day
Yes,
because of the way the
where the
calendar
calendar falls where it ends at the end of the year.
Do you feel like these animals are getting pushed further into inaccessible or harder to access areas as the hunts, by adding another hunt? Are we increasing the difficulty for archery hunters at the same time as limiting their days?
The hope is that adding the hunt will limit that pressure, the amount of pressure, because on some of those hunts, if you get too many hunters at once, that will move the animals. But if we can spread them out throughout the season, that helps limit the pressure. And on the archery hunt, success rates over since 2007, the average time it took to harvest on that archery hunt was 6.4 days.
I looked at, if I had my information correct last year, though, it was 9 days.
Yeah, there is a couple times it has been over at 8 days. Yep.
I would like to see the archery guys have a better opportunity when you wait for a hunt of a lifetime, to be shut down to 8 days. I think puts a lot of pressure.
And that is just the 1 year.
Yeah,
Next year.
I do realize that, but if you're the guy that draws that 1 year, it just seems like giving them unfair treatment. And then my other concern was just with the elk. I like, what you're doing with the extended archery and the boundaries and everything in the presentation. Just wondering if you've thought about it all, putting a provision in to shut that hunt down if we got into a severe winter. I know, that's kind of the idea is to move them and get them off the agricultural land, but we always hear about not harassing wildlife, when they're weakened and so forth, and you're putting these archery guys out in areas where maybe the optics of people seeing them hunt. Have you considered at all just putting it like a 10-day, hey, we can shut this down?
Yeah, there's reasons we could shut things down if it's not that drastic, but the boundary on this is pretty much all private.
Yeah.
And then there's areas we like to keep these elk out of, and there's areas that are close by where those elk can go, they get pushed out of.
Okay. Yeah, this was concerned.
Chris, just on that, one of the authorities that our director has is the authority to shut down a hunt in an emergency situation. So if we ever got in that situation where there's a public safety issue or something that we just didn't anticipate, that's one of the things that our director can do on very short notice when we get in if we get in those situations.
Thank you. I think we'd all like to see a good winter. So, yeah.
Is there any concern about access to that private land? Years ago, I hunted in Logan for deer. It was 95% private. I couldn't find a single private landowner to let me on and running up the division and said, bags not any deer unless you are a landowner.
Right.
Has there been a problem with that, or at least just landowners having their own land?
That is a concern. We do have some landowners that are so fed up with the elk that I think they're going to be willing to let guys hunt them. We also have a couple of walk-in access areas in there that will provide some hunting opportunities.
Back onto the Henrys, looking at the stats and for the hunt tables with the new hunt, it's 63 days and 9 days of break that we'll be pushing those bison. So 63 days total. And we want to add another hunt so we can be more successful. And the comment was 9 days success rate, close to a 9-day success rate to get the harvest. But everybody's not there on day one. So we're driving those down, and I'm 100% for some opportunity for hunting and those types of things. But now we're just going to pressure them even worse and worse. They don't even have a break at this point. Before in the hunt tables, it would allow them a little bit of a break to come back up out of the bottoms, the depths of the earth down there, because they'll get shoved out there a long ways with the pressure. I've seen them out there a long ways over the years.
Yeah, and part of this was an emergency because of drought conditions that are down there. So adding another hunt, if permits are added on, we have an area to put those permits. So you won't see all these hunts being maxed out at 30 permits, year after year, but it gives another tool for another hunt. So if we do get more permits added on because of drought conditions, they can go to a certain area instead of all going like hunter's choice permits.
So this would be specifically a new hunt for a drought year?
Well, it'll be in there for the next couple of years, and then it'll be looked at and revised.
So drought tolerance this year down there, right?
Yeah, it was pretty bad drought.
So does the hunt start this year where we've got the drought, or are we going to prolong it till next year and we have a really good winter on the Henrys and our drought isn't quite as bad, and then we're still going to go in there and knock them out? Is that the plan?
It'd be proposed for the next 2 years, but permit numbers can be adjusted.
With the original hunts that are set in place right now.
Yeah, so Mike, we put the wildlife board added the additional 19 this year because of the drought.
Yeah.
And because we're in a 3-year, we've set our hunts for 3 years. This hunt would continue now for the next 2 years of the cycle for setting hunts. And then the next time we do hunt dates if it's not needed anymore, it would go away. But it would be anticipated that this would be, it happened this year without the extra hunt. We'd have the extra hunt for the next 2 years, and then it would be reevaluated.
Okay. And those permit numbers can be adjusted. Other questions from the RAC? Public? Yes, we move on to comments. Leave it up to comments from the RAC.
I don't currently have any comment cards. Does anybody want to comment on this? Okay, guess we're back to the RAC.
There's no comment from the RAC. Public, open it up for a motion on this.
I would motion to pass it, but only if the archery hunt was given equal time next year on that calendar.
I'll second that.
So when you say equal time, would you mean a minimum of a 9-day archery hunt?
Equal time to what the rifle hunters are experiencing, whatever that is, whether they have to divide that hunt out this many days per hunt.
I think those are 12-day, so
Yeah, those are 12 days.
I would just like to see the archery guys, if you've waited that long to drive a lifetime tag and you're the last hunt of the year, I'd like to see them have their opportunity.
You still seconding that?
yeah.
So I've got a motion to pass it, but with the archery hunters getting the same 12 days of time that
It wouldn't necessarily be 12 days because they'd have to take some off of it. So the way I've written it, tell me if this matches. The motion is to accept with the exception of the archery hunt get equal time to hunt, but with the same number of days to hunt as the rifle hunters. Correct.
Didn't you just make the comment about worrying about too much pressure and not having a break or something? And now we're fine with just keeping the pressure the same, and not giving a break next year? It doesn't make, it's not judged.
So you would take the pressure off on the rifle tags. You would take some days away because you only have a limited amount of time we can hunt, November 1st, January 31st. So there has to be a give on one end.
So you would remove the, you decrease the new hunt count only from 12 to 23 to 12 to,
The success rate's 6 to 9 days. You need 12 days on a rifle hunt down there.
that 6 days was for the archery hunt. The average for the archery hunt was 6.4 since 2017.
The average for the rifle hunt is considerably less, on the early hunts especially.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but on my archery hunt. There was 2 years since 2017 that it took longer than the 8 days.
But just to be clear for Park's question, my understanding is we wouldn't be adding any extra days, but we would be distributing the days, the same number of days, a little more equally. That's what the motion is.
so would you overlap them, those new hunt count only and archery hunter? Would they overlap? And how would you enforce that?
Something to keep in mind as well, as you'd be shortening the following year archery hunt.
You'd be shortening it, but not short down to 8 days.
No, but you would be shortening it.
Yes.
So, I just wondered how that, Sam, how does that affect, and what's the downside to saying we're gonna take a day or two off of rifle hunters and put on archery hunters? I mean, I feel like we're opening a can of worms.
Yeah, we probably are. We're down changing some of these, the hunt structures and season dates that have already been established.
Is there a way to put the archery hunt in where you're putting putting this extra cow, just switch those dates around.
I don't think so. That's something we probably have to talk with biologists in the area.
Yeah, I think I think we can move forward with the motion. If it's passed eventually by the wildlife board, it would come down to the division to figure out how to make it work. And I think the motion's clear as it is, if that's what the RAC wants to do. I don't know that we need to get into the minutia of all of the details.
I think we have the motion as it stands unless somebody has any amendments they're wanting to bring forward. See none, so as to the motion, those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion fails. Only 2 for it.
Did you get a, yeah, let's do one more time.
For Denise, yeah.
One more time. How many were in favor? Have 2, all opposed? Yes, said 6. So it fails 6.
6 to 2, or 2 to 6.
So I guess, do we have a new motion?
I would motion to recommend the plan as submitted.
Can we get that on a microphone?
Motion,
I would motion to recommend the plan as submitted.
I'll second that.
Chad motions to pass it as submitted, and Russ seconds that. Any other motion?
I mean, I'm an archery hunter, pretty much only an archery hunter, so I'm kind of with you on this, and I would love to see archery in a better shot. It's like, I think one up set now, correct, where it's going. I would love for the board to look at increasing the chances of dogs. But archery in the winter, it can be pretty challenging, especially with in January. So I would love to see the board take a look at maybe switching that around, so it'll be a little earlier and a little longer.
Chuck, I think, personally, I think that's a great comment. I know this hunt used to be in September at one time, and back then it was a very successful hunt. And I don't like the change, but the January on the Henrys can be brutal. So, the bow in your hand would be worse. So with that being said, we have a motion to pass as is. So I guess we're to a vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Six in favor. All those opposed? Still voting. Got 2 opposed, so that passes as is, 6 to 2.
Thank you.
All right, moving on.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Yes. Clint, the Book Cliffs Bison Management Plan.
How's it going? My name's Clint. Is this still on?
Nope, just tap the,
Try this again. My name's Clint Sampson. I'm a wildlife biologist in the Blue Cliffs area of the state. Thanks for your time. One clarification with the presentation and the management plan. 2 of the individuals that were on the committee, listed on the committee, were not able to attend our meetings. And so that's really the only change we have on there. I didn't want to make it seem like all the individuals that were listed there participated. We had 2 that weren't able to, but the ones that were able to make it, we were able to come to 100% consensus after just 2 meetings. So yeah, outside of that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Clint. I guess you're looking at increasing your management size of that herd a little bit.
Yeah, the objective out there, we're recommending that we split and have a subunit objective on the Bitter Creek area, and then also another one for the south and the Robles area, the Little Creek.
And what was that split again?
So just a little bit of background as far as bison movement and management in the booklets. We're learning a lot constantly. If anybody has a crystal ball out there, I'm all for it that way. But what we found so far, bison are really susceptible to hunting pressure and to habitat treatments that way as far as their movement goes. But the Bitter Creek herd, the animals that stay consistently on that Bitter Creek unit, they're the home bodies. They're the ones they don't leave, they stay on public land. They haven't ventured into Colorado too much up to now, but they basically stay in the boundary. So from about the Steer Ridge line to the Colorado line, and they don't go too far north, they don't go too far south usually. And so they're the ones that make me feel good at night, that I know they're gonna stay home, they're where they're supposed to be. The other herd that we deal with is a migratory herd that shows up in the Robles area, usually about right before the rut. So we're talking like first part of July, they'll show up and start rolling in, and then they'll stay either until the snow drives them back out or it starts to melt in the spring. And then they migrate back onto the tribe. And so that fluctuation really has affected our ability to manage that herd because we get such an influx for a certain amount of months of the year that affects our wintering objective. And so by splitting it and making two separate objectives, we'll be able to provide a better hunt for sportsmen on the Bitter Creek unit, because what we found so far is, man, now instead of being able to go out and just look on one or two ridges, now you have to look, unit wide for around, 125 animals that are broken up into smaller herds. And so it's made for a real difficult hunt on that Bitter Creek side. But our ability to increase those numbers, and I really believe the groundwork is in place. We've done a lot of work, habitat work. We've done a lot of work moving feral horses, things like that. Sorry.
Just a question. So you want to increase the population by almost 50% from 450 to 650 in these two units. And basically you said they're distributed more, so there's less impact with that 450 population, but you're increasing to 650, greater distribution. Have you analyzed or give a prediction of what that increased impact will look like?
I see it being spread out like they are now and be able to grow them at a slow pace because we do have a really high bull to cow ratio that way. And we've been able to keep that Bitter Creek herd down, in the hundreds as far as just total number. And so I think we can grow them at a slow enough rate. We'll be able to adapt and see changes as they happen.
Thank you.
Quinn, is there some of them going into Colorado? Is Colorado hunting some of these buffalo now?
Great question. Yeah, so, bison are a lot like my teenage daughters. Like as soon as I ask them to do something, right? As soon as I ask them to do something, even if they were already planning on doing it, they're going to change their mind, right? And so with them and their movements, most of the time, at least with our collar data, it shows they go right up to the line and they just stay right there. It's like an invisible length fence there. Because currently Colorado does not value them as a wildlife species. They consider them trespass livestock. So as soon as those bison cross the state line, they get shot. And so those cows are pretty smart when it comes to pressure and things like that. Now coming on to January 1st, Colorado is changing how they value them, and they will be considered a protected wildlife species. So after that, we'll see how long it takes for things to adapt, and Colorado can kind of do what they want. But so far they've reached out to us and want to work with us on solutions. And,
Do you foresee them wanting to have buffalo on that side of the state line and hunt them?
Oh, that's a tough question. Yeah, I don't foresee much in the future. If I do, I usually get it wrong. So, yeah, it's pretty much kind of up to them.
Okay. Clint, what process is Colorado, is this through their legislature, through their wildlife board? How are they changing the status of bison, you know?
I think it's similar to our public process. They've been having a lot of meetings.
So through their wildlife board, it's
Yeah.
not legislative.
I hate to say one way or the other. It could be legislative, but I know they have a lot of meetings with their biologists and the public.
Okay, thank you.
But do any of these bison, do they end up on reservation land also?
Yeah, so that herd that migrates on and off of the Little Creek unit, that Rollis area we call it, yep, they will, at times of the year, like, probably May, June, you ride in that Rollis area and you'll be lucky to find very many bison at all. They'll all leave. And then when we fly it in the winter, a lot of times, yeah, you can see anywhere from 300 to 500 animals.
Did we get our hunts lined out to where it's working a little better out there now with the
I think so.
leaving from the pressure?
Yeah, like I say, we've learned a lot, and anytime they can, make a fool of me, they usually do. But so far, this new hunt structure where there's gaps in between have really shown to kind of let the animals relax and be comfortable because they want to be there. You watch their movement. As soon as they get too much pressure, they'll get pushed back to that tribal line, and they will just stage, right there. They want to be, in that area and spend, as much time in there as they can. But they're smart enough to know where to go and not get shot. Well, so yeah, I think this new hunt structure, it's looking positive.
No, I'm just sitting here thinking with my third thought that maybe we can make buffalo they shoot, wolf crosses the line, we get to shoot.
I'll leave that on Kevin to answer.
Any questions from the
I'm not gonna answer that, but I did get a text from Kobe in Colorado. They were changed to a protected wildlife by their legislature, and now their wildlife agency is working on a rule, and then we'll do a management plan. So the first step's been taken, and now it's been passed on.
Thanks, Kevin.
I have a question. In the justification for doing this, there's increased forage and then changes to grazing practices. Is there still in this new structure the ability to work with local grazers and things? Is it livestock grazing change practice or is it bison change grazing practices? Does that make sense?
Excellent question. Yeah, and on our committee, Clay McCackney is listed one of them. He's the local permittee, the only cattle permittee out there in the Blue Cliffs that's actively grazing right now. And so, yeah, we work with him
So
constantly.
there's still opportunity for conversations to happen and those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I just talked to Clay the other day. And so, yeah, we have good communication. We work really well together as far as improving habitat and springs and all sorts of things.
Clint, did the Utes have a harvest objective on bison? Do they hunt them?
They do.
And do they coordinate those things with you then to?
We try to coordinate with them best we can. Some years are better than others as far as information they want to share with us. But most of the time, it's kind of a curtain there. And so,
Were we able to get the access back to cross in that 1 mile area?
yes. Yeah, so if you're a sportsman and you want to access that right away across the Ute tribal land, you can submit an access or a request for an access permit through the Ute tribe. And so far, I haven't heard of too many people being turned away that way. So, yeah, they do ask you to give them, I think it's 21 days notice before you want to.
Other questions from the RAC?
Turn it over to the public. Questions? Don't see any, public cards. Do we have any feedback? No, we had no online comments either, so. I guess we'll turn it back to the RAC for comments if there is any. Don't see any, so. Look for a motion.
A motion that we accept is presented.
I'll second that motion.
Chuck and Chris, motion accepted as presented, first, second motion. Any discussion? Motion? I don't see any, so all those in favor of passing as presented, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Clint. No, I think we're ready to move on to Lindy.
So I'm ready,
All right, Lindy, hot seat.
always. Yeah, so I don't have any clarifications, so any questions, love to answer them.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, so it looks like there's two ways you can get relief. One, if your home or your access is cut off somehow, you're able to get some relief. Or if your unit is burned halfway to the ground. then-
Correct, so yeah, so this rule is kind of divided as a hunter relief versus a unit. And the hunter relief can be individual. If it's the unit relief, it's the whole wide, it's all the hunters, so.
So, Lindy, under that pretext, on the Pine Valley, which had been burned 50% of the unit, nobody was really eligible to forward that.
Correct, yeah, that would be, you
But the
know,
Monroe was different, right?
it met those
Yeah.
criterias. And that's kind of where this rule stemmed from, is so that
Exactly.
the division has some authority instead of making an emergency board meeting and trying to help. You know, one thing to point out, it is like 50% of hunting opportunity and access. So there's tons of different variables that the director would look at these criterias. You know, when the fire started, how much is it consumed, how much road access, where the species of that particular that's being affected, where they're running to, or where they're hiding, or their habitat, or, you know, because there's some units that are huge, but they don't have the majority of the habitat for DWR species. So there's tons of different variables related to those criteria.
Any questions, Zach? Yes, we'll open it up to the public. Any questions for Lindy? Don't see any, so. There's no voting cards. Any comments from Zach?
I appreciate the vision of doing this and taking a look at this. This year would have been really hard for a lot of hunters that have waited a long time, especially the Monroe. So I think it's a good move.
Yes, I do got one question to that. Did you see a lot of them turn those tags back on Monroe? Or
It was
did
about
most of them-
50-50. So 50% turned them in, 50%.
And some of them kept them for next year, is that right?
Yeah, so some extended and some got their points back. So other ones that, I can pull that sheet real quick. Overall. Yeah, so about 50-50, and then other ones about 40 decided to get their points back, about 60% decided to extend. And that's, you know, all the, you know, different hunts throughout that was offered those options.
And I heard good comments on most of that, those individuals that I talked to. Thank you. Guess we'll open up for motion.
I'll make a motion to pass as presented.
I second.
Mike makes a motion, passes presented. Mark seconds. Any discussion? None, take a vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lindy.
Thank you.
Darren.
I just have a couple of clarifications before we get started. First of all, in the presentation for Salt Well CWMU, they're dropping deer and dropping 10 of their pronghorn tags. And in the presentation, so there was no acreage change. There actually is a significant acreage change. They're dropping 28,614 acres while the landowners pulled out. So they're now 7,803 acre CWU, so they qualify for pronghorn, but that's the reason they dropped deer and just don't have that habitat anymore. Drop their pronghorn events down. The other clarification that may not have been clear in the presentation is the two bear CWMU is asking, going to drop elk for next year, and that's mainly, we just want the public to know they've been putting in for that elk hunt. That won't be an option next year. So aside from that, happy to take questions.
Question for RAC on CWUs.
So the Southern Region renewal was the Pavlon Enzyme, is that correct? And they were switching, if I remember right, they were switching to 80-20 on their out. What were they before?
They're 80. Let
Basically,
me double check. Unless someone here knows in the region. Sorry.
I just want to give Mike a hard time, but he's not here.
Yeah. He's one of those that's got too many hours. That is right, though. I think they were 85 units.
So just so for the benefit of our new RAC members, what that means, there'll be some increased opportunity for antlered hunts for the public, but the CWU will keep additional opportunities for antlerless by increasing the, it's a fair trade.
Thanks, Kevin.
Other questions for RAC? Open it up to questions from the public. See, we do have one comment card here. I don't see any questions, so come on up.
This is just a comment. This may not be the right time to present this, but the Limited Entry Landowners Association here in the state of Utah recommends that we approve this as presented by the division. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Bob, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, discussion, I guess. See none, so I guess I'll take motions.
Make a motion to pass as presented.
Mike motions passes presented. Have a second. Chuck will second it. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Oh, passes unanimous. Yes, that'll conclude tonight's meeting. Go over anything for the future ones?
Just to mention that our next meeting is scheduled for December 12th in Richfield.
Thank you all for being here.
December 16th.